They thought it was over. They thought the silence meant victory, that walking away without apology meant freedom, that the pain they caused wouldn't echo. But life doesn't work that way. What they fail to understand is that no act of betrayal, no injustice, no deliberate harm goes unnoticed by the deeper order of things. Yes, they may have smiled while leaving you in ruins. Yes, they may have told themselves that you were the problem, that their manipulation was justified. But the truth is, they're not at peace. You don't get away with sowing darkness. You become it. And now, the very evil they unleashed is consuming them from within. This is not a story of revenge. It's a story of truth catching up. And for those who have suffered quietly, this is your vindication. The weight of hidden guilt always rises. They thought they buried it. The lie, the betrayal, the manipulation, all sealed away behind a well-practiced smile and a trail of silence. They moved on like nothing happened, like their actions were just chapters in a story only they had the right to write. No remorse, no accountability, just the illusion of escape. But what they don't know, what they refuse to face, is that the mind is not a passive witness to wrongdoing. It keeps score. It records everything, and eventually the weight of what they've done begins to rise. You see, people assume guilt only torments those with a conscience, but guilt doesn't need permission. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It doesn't care about your rationalizations, your justifications, or the lies you've told to make yourself sleep better at night. Guilt is the natural consequence of moral violation, and it is written into the very structure of the human psyche. You may suppress it, you may hide it beneath distraction, success, or shallow pleasures. But it doesn't disappear. It waits. At first, it's subtle, a restlessness, a tightening in the chest when they hear your name, a flicker of shame when they look in the mirror a second too long, a sudden wave of silence in rooms where they once felt powerful. And as the years stretch on, the cracks begin to widen. The relationships they thought were real, shallow. The joy they thought would follow them, numbed. The peace they thought they could buy, unreachable. Because when you betray someone deeply, when you knowingly cause harm to a loyal soul, you are not just wounding them. You are carving something dark into your own reflection. And one day, you'll be forced to face it. This is the truth they didn't calculate, that the human soul is not designed to carry evil comfortably, that the lie doesn't stay in the past, it travels with them. It enters their words, poisons their choices, shadows their ambitions. The very thing they thought they got away with starts unraveling their inner world, not because someone exposed them, but because they can't outrun themselves. They can move cities, change friends, delete messages, but they cannot delete memory. And eventually what was done in secret becomes the prison of the mind. Have you ever seen someone who once looked vibrant slowly lose their light? Seen their eyes become heavy, their laughter hollow, their confidence fake? That's not time aging them. That's guilt. That's the corrosion of the soul when it's been soaked in dishonesty. And make no mistake, they know. Maybe not consciously, not with full clarity, but deep down they know. They've wounded something sacred, and that knowledge festers. Because once you violate truth, peace becomes impossible. You may distract yourself for a while with work, with noise, with people who don't challenge your narrative. But in the quiet, when everything stops, the guilt knocks. They may act like they're unbothered, like they've moved on, like they're winning. But winning at the expense of your own integrity is not victory, it's decay. And here's the tragedy. The longer they deny it, the heavier it becomes. Because guilt, unlike regret, doesn't fade with time. It intensifies. Every lie they told, every moment they twisted the truth to serve themselves, every time they ignored the voice that told them this is wrong, all of it becomes a chain, and the longer they carry it, the tighter it pulls. There's no need to confront them, no need to chase closure. Life is already doing the work. The very soul they thought they damaged without consequence is rising, and in contrast, they are unraveling. Because truth has a strange way of haunting people, especially those who try to bury it. And guilt is the ghost that never forgets. It whispers when they try to rest. It echoes when they're alone. It replays the things they thought they'd silenced. You don't have to wait for their apology. The guilt has already arrived. It's living in their skin. It's breaking their sleep. It's bleeding into their relationships because no one gets away with it. Not really. They may fool others. They may even fool themselves for a while, but eventually, inevitably, they become the victim of their own deception. So if you're still haunted by what they did, let this truth settle your heart. They are not free. What they did not disappear. It is working its way back to them, not through punishment, but through transformation. Their world may look whole on the outside, but on the inside, the guilt is cracking the foundation. Slowly, quietly, without mercy. And when it finally rises to the surface, as it always does, they won't be able to hide, not from you, not from others, and especially not from themselves. You cannot outsmart the moral order. There is a moral architecture to life, not a set of man-made rules, not a social script, not a list of punishments written down by institutions, but something far deeper. It's embedded in the structure of existence itself. An invisible framework that governs cause and effect, right and wrong, truth and deception. And no matter how clever someone believes they are, no matter how many people they manipulate, they cannot outsmart it. Because this order doesn't need your belief to function. It simply is. They thought they were getting ahead, thought they could outwit the consequences, that if no one saw it, it didn't count, that if they twisted the story fast enough, if they threw enough distractions, if they stayed one step ahead of the fallout, they'd escape untouched. But what they don't realize is that every immoral act leaves an imprint, not just on the people they hurt, but on the fabric of their own lives. The universe doesn't forget. The soul doesn't forget. Life keeps perfect accounts, and when you violate the deep moral current of existence, it doesn't strike back like lightning. It folds in slowly, like a storm tightening its grip. The truth is, nobody escapes themselves, and nobody outmaneuvers the price of their own actions. The person who deceives may feel triumphant when they walk away with what wasn't theirs, when they leave someone broken behind them, when they betray without remorse. But time is not on their side, because the longer they live out of alignment with truth, the more their inner world begins to break down. The consequences aren't always immediate, but they are guaranteed. And they don't show up in the way they expect, not in flames or exposure. No, the punishment is more poetic than that. It's the slow erosion of their peace. It's the decay of joy. It's the silent destruction of trust. Even in themselves, they start to feel it when things stop working the way they used to, when their connections become more shallow, when people begin to sense something's off, when anxiety tightens its grip in moments where there should be ease. That's not random. That's the moral order moving. It's not always loud, it's not always public, but it is always precise. Life has a way of giving people exactly what they've sown, not through revenge, but through reflection. Because when you sow lies, you reap disconnection. When you sow selfishness, you reap emptiness. When you sow harm, you reap isolation. You cannot plant poison and expect peace. It doesn't matter how skilled they are at performing, how well they sell the version of themselves to the world, because no performance can protect you from what you've become. You can fool others for a while, yes, but the soul knows, the body knows, the future knows, and the very life they thought they could shape to their own will begins to resist them. The opportunities dry up, the relationships collapse, the reputation they fought to control begins to slip through their hands, not because someone turned against them, but because reality itself no longer agrees with them. This is the justice they never saw coming, that you don't need a courtroom for consequences, that there is no hiding from reality itself. When you live in deception, the world becomes a mirror of your dishonesty. Everything starts reflecting back the falsehood you've created. People don't trust you, even if they don't know why. Life feels heavier, even if you seem successful. And what once came easy now resists your touch. That's not coincidence. That's alignment breaking down. And here's the truth many don't want to hear. The moral order does not adjust itself for your convenience. It doesn't shift because you feel justified in your betrayal. It doesn't bend because you were hurt once too, or because you think you deserved the outcome you created. It operates independently of your reasoning, and it keeps score with unshakable clarity. So when someone crosses a line, when they betray, exploit, or deceive, and they walk away like they've won, understand this. They haven't outsmarted anything, they've only delayed the collapse. And every step they take forward is now carrying the weight of everything they refuse to face. Sooner or later it catches up. Because there's a gravity to truth, a force that pulls everything back into balance. And those who act in darkness must eventually live in its shadow. If you've ever wondered whether they'll pay for what they did, you don't need to wonder. Life is already answering that question. Slowly, relentlessly, with mathematical precision. They are not getting away with it. They are being slowly corrected by a force they can neither see nor escape. That's not vengeance. That's order. And so don't waste your strength trying to make them see it. Don't trade your peace for their punishment. The moral structure of reality is already at work, and the deeper the violation, the more severe the cost. It may not happen when you want it to, but it will happen, because in the end, no one outsmarts the truth. False power always consumes itself. There is a kind of power that looks strong on the surface, but is hollow at its core, a kind of influence gained not by wisdom, not by truth, but by manipulation, by coercion, by fear. It is the power of illusion, the mask of dominance, worn by those who use people, twist narratives, and exploit kindness as a weakness. They walk with confidence, they speak with certainty, they convince others they are in control. But what they don't realize is that this kind of power, this false, stolen authority, always turns inward. It devours the very person who wields it, because power without integrity is not strength. It is wrought in disguise. In the beginning, it feels exhilarating. They think they've outplayed the system. They use others like pieces on a chessboard, believing they see farther, think faster, and operate above the rules. They gaslight the innocent, rewrite the truth, wear masks so well that even they begin to believe them. But here's the truth they can't run from. Anything built on lies is already collapsing. It may stand for a time, it may even rise high, but the foundation is crumbling beneath every step they take, and when it falls, it will fall on them first. False power feeds on ego. It thrives in silence where no one is brave enough to challenge it. It feeds on fear, not the kind it feels, but the kind it creates. It needs victims to survive. It needs submission to maintain its illusion. But nothing that depends on control can last, because control is always temporary. People wake up, truth leaks through, masks slip, and the moment control is lost, even for a second, the entire structure collapses. Like a fire that consumes its own fuel, false power always runs out. And when it does, all that remains is the ashes of who they pretended to be. They thought they were untouchable, that the image they curated was enough to protect them from reality, that their ability to spin every situation, to rewrite every story, made them invincible. But what they didn't see, what they couldn't see, is that every time they chose dominance over decency, they were setting fire to their own soul. Slowly, quietly, irrevocably. And now the fire is spreading. It shows up first in their relationships. The people closest to them start to pull away, not because they know everything, but because something feels wrong, something smells like smoke, the warmth is gone, the trust is gone, and the connections they thought they controlled begin to unravel. Because people may not always understand the details, but they feel the energy. And false power has a coldness to it, a hollowness that becomes harder and harder to hide. Then it moves inward. The very self they use to manipulate others starts to fracture. Their sense of identity becomes unstable. The lies they told begin to clash. The control they once had begins to turn on them. Anxiety creeps in, paranoia grows, and the fear of being found out becomes unbearable. Not because someone is exposing them, but because they know. Deep down, they know the truth is catching up, and they can't keep the illusion going forever. They start to see enemies where there are none. They become defensive, reactive, restless. Their mind, once sharp and strategic, becomes cluttered with the weight of everything they're trying to suppress. That's not coincidence. That's corruption. That's what happens when power is used as a weapon rather than a responsibility. It breaks the mind, it breaks the heart, and eventually it breaks the life they thought they were in control of. There's a difference between power and tyranny. One builds, the other destroys. Real power is rooted in truth, service, and inner strength. False power is built on fear, deception, and emotional theft. One creates peace, the other creates chaos, and eventually the chaos turns inward. They can't escape it. Because false power doesn't just harm the people around them, it destroys them from the inside out. If you've ever seen someone who seemed to have it all slowly come apart, someone who once had everyone under their thumb, now barely holding on, you've witnessed this principle in action. The decay wasn't sudden. It was silent. It was the erosion of everything they built on lies. And when the collapse comes, it isn't just about losing status or control. It's about losing themselves. Because when you fake your way through life, when you climb over others, when you use pain as leverage, you don't just break the people you touch. You break your own reflection. So if you're still haunted by the power they once had over you, let this truth settle deep into your spirit. That power was never real. It was fear. It was illusion. And it is now turning on them, slowly, mercilessly, inevitably, because the power they thought made them strong is the very force that is now pulling them apart. The ones they tried to break rise in silence. They thought breaking you would be the end of your story. They believed that taking your loyalty for granted, that wounding you in the quiet corners of your heart would destroy your will. They thought you wouldn't recover, that you'd stay shattered, that you'd walk the rest of your life carrying the weight of their betrayal like a burden too heavy to bear. But there's a truth they never accounted for. Some people don't break, they transform. Some people don't stay wounded, they rise. And when they do it without noise, without drama, without vengeance. They rise in silence. The deepest healing never announces itself. It happens in the stillness. While they continue pretending you're broken, you're rebuilding. While they sleep soundly under the illusion that they've won, you're learning to walk again, stronger, wiser, colder where necessary, but still rooted in integrity. And that quiet transformation, that's the very thing that terrifies them, even if they don't yet realize it. You didn't scream, you didn't expose them, you didn't beg. Instead, you withdrew. You faced the pain head on, not because you were weak, but because you were real. Because you knew that true power is not about fighting to be seen, it's about surviving when no one is watching. And they mistook your silence for defeat. They thought your absence was a sign of collapse. But what they didn't see is that you were being reborn. There's something unshakable about those who rise without applause. Something terrifying about a soul that has walked through fire alone and didn't come out begging for sympathy, but returned with clarity and armor. The person they thought they left in pieces no longer exists. What remains is someone they no longer recognize, someone they can no longer control, someone they can no longer reach. And this is where the balance begins to shift. They continue pretending you're the same because it comforts them. Because if they admit you've outgrown their shadow, they must also admit they were never as powerful as they imagined. But you feel it now. You see it, that you've grown beyond the need for revenge, beyond the desire to be understood by someone who was committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer seek closure from someone who was never open. That's not bitterness, that's evolution. They tried to define your worth by how you responded to their damage. They thought silence meant weakness, that walking away meant surrender. But silence is not surrender. It is strategy. It is strength choosing its battles. It is wisdom that no longer throws itself into fires just to prove it can survive the burn. They tried to break you because they couldn't control you. They tried to shame you because your authenticity threatened their illusion. They targeted you not because you were small, but because you were light. And that light made their shadows uncomfortable. And now you walk in a different direction. Not because you lost, but because you realized there's nothing left to win with someone who was never playing fair in the first place. You didn't just survive, you became something they can't touch. They can't touch the way you've learned to love yourself now. They can't touch the wisdom you earned in the silence. They can't touch the intuition you sharpened while picking up the pieces they left behind. And most of all, they can't touch the version of you that no longer needs validation, permission, or recognition from the very hands that tried to crush you. There is no louder revenge than peace, no greater victory than a life lived beyond their reach. And while they continue repeating the same patterns, burning the same bridges, and spinning the same lies, you are rising quietly, powerfully, and it is driving them mad in ways they cannot explain because deep down they feel it. The shift, the distance, the way your silence now speaks louder than all the words they once used to keep you small. You don't need to remind them of what they did. You are the reminder. Your presence, your growth, your light. Every breath you take in freedom is a sentence in the truth they can't escape. So let them pretend you're still broken. Let them cling to the version of you that no longer exists. Because the reality is, they didn't break you. They broke the illusion you once had that they were worthy of you. And in that collapse, you found yourself. You are no longer the person who tolerated the chaos. You're no longer the person who doubted your own worth to accommodate their comfort. You have risen, not for them to see, but for you to be. And the ones who rise in silence, they don't just survive what was meant to destroy them, they become untouchable. Justice doesn't shout, it arrives. Justice doesn't come with noise. It doesn't need sirens or headlines. It doesn't arrive on your schedule or make an announcement before it lands. It shows up like a shadow at first, unnoticed, unacknowledged, and then suddenly it becomes everything. For a while, it looks like injustice has the upper hand. The wrongdoers walk freely, the liars are believed, the manipulators are celebrated, and the ones who were hurt, silenced, abandoned, they seem forgotten. But what we forget is that justice is not in a hurry. It's not loud because it's not insecure. It's silent because it is certain. It doesn't shout. It arrives. There were days you looked at the sky and wondered if anything would ever be made right, if the people who hurt you would ever face the cost of what they did, if the betrayal, the loss, the agony that echoed through your soul would ever find its answer. And in those moments, it felt like the world favored the cruel. But what you didn't see then, what you see now, is that the process of justice isn't just external. It begins within. And the first place it restores is you. They thought they could do what they did and walk away untouched. They assumed life wouldn't hold them accountable because no one else did. That because the world didn't call them out, they got away clean. But no one escapes the truth. No one slips through the cracks of reality. Justice may delay, but it does not forget. And the weight of what they've done is following them. Every lie they spoke, every mask they wore, every time they used your goodness as an opportunity to exploit, all of it is a debt. And the universe always collects. They may still smile in public, still post like nothing happened, still carry the illusion of peace, but peace cannot live in a soul that lives on lies. What they destroyed in others is now eating away at them from the inside, quietly, relentlessly. It may not be visible, but it is real. Because when you escape justice in the outer world, it finds you in the inner one, in your thoughts, in your regrets, in your sleepless nights, in the way your spirit begins to fold under the weight of guilt that can no longer be buried. Real justice is poetic. It doesn't return harm for harm. It doesn't stoop to revenge. It simply rearranges life until everything comes full circle. And those who once stood above others through deceit, they will find themselves slowly sinking beneath the weight of their own actions. The very things they used to rise will become the very things that drag them down. You won't have to speak for them. Life will. You won't have to prove what they did. Truth will. Because justice is not a performance. It is a process. You don't need to chase it. You don't need to scream to be seen. The universe, the divine order, whatever name you give to that moral current underneath reality, it sees all. It hears what wasn't spoken. It remembers what was done in secret. And while it may test you through silence, it never forsakes you. It refines you while it prepares their reckoning, because you were never meant to carry their consequences, only your healing. And that's what you've done. You didn't let their actions become your identity. You didn't allow their damage to become your destiny. You rebuilt. You stood when you had no strength left. You grieved, yes, but you grew. You didn't fall into the pit they dug. You climbed out and left the grave they intended for you as their own. Now look at the path they walk. The signs are subtle, but they're there. The unease they can't shake, the tension in their smile, the way relationships start to fracture, the way peace evades them no matter how hard they chase it. That's justice. That's life balancing the scale, not because you demanded it, but because truth demands it. Every structure built on injustice collapses eventually. Every tower raised by betrayal is already leaning toward its fall. They don't know it yet, or maybe they do, and that's what keeps them restless. You see, justice doesn't show up with fireworks. It shows up when they least expect it, in the form of opportunities denied, in the slow disintegration of false images, in the haunting awareness that they've lost something they will never get back: your access, your trust, your presence, your light. And that loss, that silent exile from your world, is the verdict. It is the gavel that falls without sound. So if you're still waiting for the day they pay, stop. Yeah, you don't need that day. It's already happening. The collapse is quiet, but it is absolute. Let your peace be your proof. Let your growth be your testimony. Let your life, filled with dignity, healing, and unwavering truth, be the loudest declaration that justice arrived, not through rage, but through restoration. Because in the end, the story was never about what they did to you. It was about what you became despite it. And that right there is the justice they never saw coming.